stuff. There you go, do you want to...
That's really... Hello. Hey, can you guys hear us?
I think you have to, like, shout.
Hello.
Okay.
Hey. Thank you for coming, guys. So obviously you've heard before, this is about essay writing. And we're both third-year biomed, so we're going to try and help you do that. I mean, there was nobody to help us last year, but we did okay, right? So more A's than B's, so, you know, hopefully you'll be fine, you know, even without our help. So that's all we wanted to say today, and I guess you'll be fine, you know?
Yeah, that's it, no.
Yeah,
okay.
That's it. Okay, no, really, but, so yeah, this is Caitlin, I'm Hira, and let's just get started, all right?
Okay, cool. I'm going to pin this on me so I look really professional. Okay, so I guess we have a mixture of first and second. Do we have any third years out of interest? Apart from? Okay, cool. But yeah, so like Hira said, I'm just going to talk through some tips that I would sort of consider useful if I was writing an essay and was a bit unsure. So I guess if you're in the first year, you probably haven't done any essays yet. So I'm going to try and keep it quite basic but helpful. It's going to be a bit dry because essay writing is pretty boring, but I'm afraid there's not much you can do about that. So I'll get started. So, okay, before the exam, just a quick word. Loads of different revision styles. This isn't a revision lecture as such, so I won't go into those too much. But for essay writing, I mean, in the first and second year, realistically, they don't expect you to do a huge amount more than the lectures, or if at all, to be honest. So I would say focusing on learning the lecture material really, really well, with all the specific examples, with pretty much everything they mention, unless they specifically say, don't worry about that, will be useful. So extra reading, pretty much all the lectures will say, oh, you won't get an A unless you do extra reading. In my personal experience, this is BioMed, I can say this quite confidently, I'm not 100% sure for other subjects, but mine, I got a mixture of A's and B's in mine, and I can think of probably one essay in that I actually put extra reading in, and that was immunology, and that's quite a harsh module, so I don't think I would have got an A if I hadn't put the extra reading in, but plenty of the other ones, I just regurgitated the lectures very well and remembered detail, and that was good enough. So don't stress too much about it. I would say if you've got extra brain space, that's great, but focus more on learning everything that's in the lecture first. Adding on to that, for me, group revision really helps, because basically if you all do a little bit of extra reading or you have your own ways of doing things, it means you can share that. So essentially it's like you've got the knowledge of several other people, which you can then, it's maybe more likely that you'll actually remember something to put in your essay. Okay, so past papers, again, SPCS are a bit funny about this. Sometimes they don't put any up. You probably know what the link is on SPCS, the QM Plus page. I've put a link on at the end of this presentation as well. Again, it's good just to practice, see the kind of questions they might ask you, but you can't really question spot. So just because they asked something last year doesn't mean they won't ask it again this year, but it's good to definitely practice writing essays in a timed way before you actually do it in the exam. Okay, so said about group revision, and obviously, yeah, practicing the essay writing, physically writing it out, not on your computer, because obviously you're not going to be doing that in the exam. It sounds obvious, but actually you need to make sure you've got the timings exactly right, because you don't want to be super rushing, you don't want to, miss things out because you've run out of time. Okay, so like I said, there's past papers available, which you can look at those for most SBCS modules. Some sort of like keywords that I kind of remembered, questions asking, things like describe this, compare and contrast this and this, or explain. And again, this probably sounds obvious, but actually answering the question with regard to what they're asking you. So describing something is not the same as explaining it. So describing is just mentioning, say, like a process. You're saying what order it goes in, for example. If you're explaining a process, you're saying why that happens. And comparing and contrasting, obviously, okay, I mean, you guys know what that is. So with that, making sure to say in every paragraph, mention thing A and thing B that you're comparing and contrasting. Okay, so planning. At the beginning of the essay, I would say it's definitely a good idea to do a quick plan. So there's a variety of styles you can use. There's a spider diagrams or A maps. I think there's a similar thing. I use spider diagrams myself, but if you just want to do literally a list or a flow chart, that's fine, because I mean your essay is going to be kind of linear anyway. Some people don't do a plan, some people just prefer to get straight in. I personally think it's good to spend a couple of minutes doing a really rough plan. It doesn't matter if they can't read it, because I would say do a plan, write your essay, cross it out at the end, but don't completely black it out, because I think this is true that if you for some reason have a bit of a disaster, run out of time, if you have something mentioned in your plan, you may get a couple of extra marks if you don't completely cross it out and, you know, erase everything. So I think it is worth doing one. And also, for me personally, what I do is, say there's like 3 essays to answer, I do a plan for each one, go back to the beginning or do some other questions, come back to my plan, see if I've remembered anything else, and then start writing it. So give yourself a couple of times to go back to it before you actually start writing, because you want to give your brain some time to work on it, because you don't want to be halfway through an essay and think, oh, there was a really good thing I could have put in the introduction. So that would be my advice, to definitely do something of a plan at the beginning and then just strike it through a couple of times. Okay, so everyone knows essay structure, introduction, main body and conclusion. So for science things, introduction doesn't need to be super long or super like philosophical or really kind of like literative. It's just a background and introduction obviously to the question. So kind of a quote that everyone thinks about introduction is, you tell them what you're going to tell them, and that's sort of true, but you want to also give a little bit of a background. You don't need to kind of go on and on for ages about, oh, you know, why the heart's such an important organ and isn't it amazing and beautiful or whatever, but some background there is good. I would say it doesn't really need to be that long. Mine personally were quite variable in length, depending on what I thought was relevant, but I would say probably will be longer than the conclusion. So as long as it's relevant stuff and you're not going off sort of on a tangent, put it in the introduction. So for the main body, again, obvious, actually have to answer the question. So if it's comparing and contrasting, say there's a couple of ways you could structure this, because I think that kind of question comes up quite a lot. So you could either talk all about the features of thing A and then all about the features of thing B. I personally like to pick a feature that I will be talking about and write how it is similar or different between the two things per paragraph. So that takes us nicely to structure. So you want it to be, you know, a good part of your marks are to do with the structure of your essay and how easy it is to read. So you want obviously to use paragraphs. You want to be, every time you make a new point, a new comparison, talking about a new feature, a new time period, you want a new paragraph. So essays where you're describing a process. So I think we had a physiology one that was about the cardiac cycle. So it makes sense to start at one point, you're going to go sequentially through. Otherwise, if you're doing if you're talking about different techniques, say, for the essential skills exam or something like that, you want to do one technique per paragraph. So the depth and breadth, I kind of touched on this earlier. So generally for first and second year, or I say for first year I'm doing essays, generally for second year, breadth of knowledge is probably more important than depth. Obviously, the more in detail you can go, that's great, and obviously that will get you higher marks, but it's probably, I would say, better to cover everything they would expect you to talk about in a little bit less detail than maybe one or two things in extreme detail, because in the first couple of years they just really want you to be able to just absorb quite a variety of stuff. So as I said with the extra reading, don't make that your focus. It's more important to, I know they don't say this, it's more important to learn to regurgitate the lectures, basically, than to like do loads and loads of independent stuff, because that might come at a cost to your sort of basic material. Okay, so putting examples in. So I put this in because one of my essays that I got to look at the beginning of third year, this was for human molecular biology, and I think I got a B in this essay because they said it was generally good, but I had lack of specific examples. So I think that one we were talking about gene regulation. So basically he wanted me to specifically, where I'd said like epigenetic modifications, he wanted me to specifically name examples of enzymes, this sort of thing. So rather than just saying like histone deacetylase or something, I can't remember now, it was a while ago, but yeah, specific examples in there they really like. So rather than just saying, oh, a such and such enzyme, give an example of it as much as you can, because then that shows that you've gone to the effort of learning the detail. That is a bit where it's kind of easy to get in extra reading, because if you've said, okay, they've mentioned this type of enzyme a lot, go and have a look at a different one they haven't mentioned that's still quite common, for example, and you can put that in, and then they go, okay, I didn't mention that in my lecture, so you never know, it could get you the extra mark or two. Diagrams. Some of them will specifically say in the question, use diagrams, or use diagrams if you wish. That's code for use diagrams. So don't worry about being a great artist. I think I pretty much put a diagram in every one of my essays, and to be honest, unless it's completely horrendously wrong, you're not going to lose marks for it. So the worst thing they'll do is just ignore it, to be honest. So if you're talking about cardiac conduction or the cardiac cycle, for example, relevant pictures might be the pressure time curve, something like that. Make sure it's labelled up and refer to it as well in your essay. I'd say is a good thing. So yeah, don't just have like a random drawing of a heart or something, because I go, yeah, that's great, but it's not relevant. But definitely I would advise using those. And again, it's another little trick where if you run out of time and you can't write it, if you can draw a diagram as well, maybe that might save you a couple of marks. Okay, so for the conclusion, again, this is kind of like in the introduction in that it's kind of a summary. You don't want to be exactly repeating what you said. So if they'd say, like, talk about important features of this, you don't want to then say, the important features of this are blah, 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 because you've already said that. But you just want to sum up and finishing by actually, again, answering the question that they've asked you. And you can keep this quite short. A good thing to put in as well is maybe some like future perspectives and like what don't we know things. So one of my mentors, I remember telling me, if you know what we don't know, that makes you look really clever, because that's almost like, okay, I know everything and I also know what we don't know. So again, that's a good tip for extra reading, is if you find something in the lecture and then you look it up and actually no one knows why it works or how it works or whatever, it's good to put that, because then you can make a suggestion for future research or whatever. Don't need to be too sort of philosophical though in the conclusion. It's just going to be literally a couple of sentences. I mean, I used to have that problem with mine where I think I had to write something really like profound, but you really don't. Like literally a couple of sentences just summing up, this is why this is important. At the moment we currently know this. This could still be yet to be discovered. And you can just end it. It doesn't have to end on any sort of grand philosophical point. Okay, so I tried desperately to look up some actual like examples of, say, like introductions, but I couldn't find any online. So, and we don't get to keep ours. I think Kira might have a little trick up her sleeve though for you. But I did find actually some advice that was written on a blog by David Hone. You guys might know him, he's the dinosaur guy. So I thought that was cool. And he'd written this little blog article after marking students' exam responses for essays. And he basically put a list of things that he doesn't like seeing. So I thought, as an academic, it's probably good to just summarise a few of those points. So sorry, this is a bit text heavy, but you can get the slides. So I've kind of touched on a lot of these already. So you don't need a long and sort of flowery and really like grandiose introduction. Just keep it simple, say the key facts, say some background things, maybe some statistics about if it's a disease or something like that, if it's relevant. Yeah, don't need to repeat the question. So it says define 4 features of X. You don't need to say X has 4 features, or the main features of X are blah, blah, blah. In science, generally, you want to avoid saying I in an essay as much as possible. Some people kind of opinions vary on this. So I doubt if you put I like once or twice in an essay, like, or I will be discussing this, that would be much of a problem. You want to ideally try and avoid that as much as you can, particularly doing it repetitively. Yeah, and then don't describe what you're describing. So you don't really need to say what you're going to do, you just need to do it. You just need to say, go ahead and describe whatever it is. So science essays are very much about, yes, you get points for writing style and for writing nicely and in good English and with good punctuation and grammar, but it's very, very important in science essays to not blab, basically, and not be space-filling. So, I mean, one of my best essay I wrote 2.5 sides for, because I literally just got the information there. Another essay I did write like 6 sides, just because I happened to know a lot of information, and then that was still fine. But when you're trying to make a point, don't take ages saying it. Just go ahead and say it. That's what sort of science is about. So it's being as concise as you can. So if you can take out like several words in a sentence, probably better just not to put them in the first place. again, about not repeating information. So don't repeat information in reverse. So like we said, if there are 4 features of X, you don't need to say, describe them, and then they go, oh yeah, and that was the 4 features. Because again, that's just wasting space and time, basically. And repetition of phrases. So if you're talking about several things, so again, 4 features of X, probably not a good idea to start every new paragraph with another feature of X is this, and another feature of X is this, and another feature of X. So this is where the sort of English part comes in to make it sound nice and be more interesting for the reader. Because if you're writing the same kind of few phrases over and over again, it's quite boring for them to read. And as much as I don't have too much sympathy for lecturers, that's going to be a pretty boring job marking several hundred essays. So you want to make yours as pleasant to read as possible. So a little bit of English in there, good spelling and grammar will really help with that. What David Hone has said, he doesn't like people saying believe or we believe this. I don't know whether I personally wrote that much. I don't feel like it's a massive thing, but I think basically the idea of why he's saying that is because it kind of seems like it's not like based on evidence, it's not an actual theory. So if something is accepted, then you can just say it basically, this is fact, this is a theory, it's got evidence behind it. You don't need to say it's believed that this, and as it says there, he doesn't like it if you then cite other people and say, oh yeah, they believe this. So you can say they show that, they hypothesize that. So there's the websites at the bottom there. It's pretty much that, except with a bit more writing, and it's all about animals and dinosaurs because that's his thing. But I just took that out so it's not so relevant here. Okay, so essay length. Like I said, mine vary from 2.5 sides to probably 6 or 7 sides, because some of the questions they will ask you are really specific. So like the immunology one was something like compare and contrast innate and adaptive immune system receptors, and there's not really a whole much you could write about that at sort of year 2 level, so it's just really concise, pick a few features, say why they're important, say why they're similar and different, short introduction and conclusion, easy. Really, really long ones were more in things like techniques and physiology, where they'll be saying, describe all the techniques that you use antibodies, which is, okay, probably hundreds, but say there was maybe like 6 or 7 ones that they taught us about. So even if you're writing maybe a third of a page each, that's quite a few pages. So don't worry about writing loads and loads of pages, because you don't have to. It's more important to, like I said, be concise. So if you've answered the question really well with good examples and good detail, you've used a nice paragraph and you've got a good sized introduction and conclusion, but you've only written 3 sides, that's fine. Because on the other hand, if you write 10 sides of paper, unless your writing's freakishly massive, and it's kind of just very basic stuff and you're kind of waffling, then that's going to probably put your grade down a lot, because they're going to go, well, you're just padding it out, you don't really know what you're talking about. Okay, so referencing, this is one that we get asked a lot about. I would say, again, this is for BioMed. In my experience, year 2 essays, they don't expect you to reference. If you did, that would probably make you look super clever, and you'd probably get those like A+. But to pass and to still do well, you're not expected to reference, or as citations like you would do in your written coursework essays, or you're not really expected to say, Smith et al. Showed in their study, blah blah blah. So, like I said, really it's more important to have the lecture material. Okay, timing, again, I've already mentioned this a bit. So practicing writing essays out in a time fashion is really important. So I think you get, so you might have to correct me on this, I think it's like, what, 45 minutes per section or something? Okay, so say if you've got 45 minutes to do an essay, and it's like 33 marks, I think. So you want to do at least 5 minutes of that on the plan. And then I would say go away, do something else. Like I said, come back to add a bit more, go back to something else. Then when you finally want to write it, give yourself obviously most of that time, so 25, 30 minutes, 35 if you've got a lot to write. Try and get it done within that time, because I'd say you definitely want to try and leave a good 5-10 minutes at the end to go through, check you haven't missed anything out, check you haven't written something in a really strange way. For me, I have a problem with my handwriting becoming more and more illegible. So actually those 5 minutes at the end for me to go through and change my handwriting so it looks like a J and not a G or whatever will make all the difference. Because if you've spelt a word obviously wrong because you've rushed it, they're going to think, okay, doesn't make you look too clever. And obviously, yeah, try as best as possible to make your handwriting as legible as you can, despite the fact you're writing probably super, super quickly. So I did want to say as well, there is quite a lot of variability between modules. So, I mean, the reason why I'm doing this talk today is because lecturers don't really tell you anything useful about writing an essay. They just say, oh yeah, if you just write the stuff we taught you, then you'll do fine. And that's really not helpful. But in my experience, what the different lecturers expect can be quite different. So, like I said, some of my essays I didn't have any extra reading, still got an A. My immunology one, I highly doubt I would have got that A if I hadn't put extra reading in, because the question would be basically unanswerable without the extra reading. So, okay, you get a choice of questions, so you can pick ones. Obviously, if you don't know one, you're not going to write about it. But it may be worth trying to really pick at the lecturers and see what each of them actually expects of you in their essay. Do they actually expect you to do extra reading to pass, to get an A? Because most people are probably going to be aiming for an A, right? So it's worth checking. Okay, so this is the mark scheme that Hero sent to me for essay. So I think for you guys it would just be the all levels bit we're focusing on. Is that right, Hero?
Level 4, yeah.
Level 4, yeah, okay. Yeah, so as usual, QM style, this is pretty vague. So there's not a huge amount I can kind of add to it, apart from, as you can see, the A's are split into quite a lot, you know, A plus, minus, minus, minus. I mean, who really cares? It's still an A, right? So don't kill yourself trying to get like 99%. I mean, obviously, if you do, that's amazing. But try and use this in your own essay writing when you've done a practice one. Try and look back and see. Unfortunately, a lot of this is quite subjective. But as you can see, I mean, you can still get an F by writing literally anything, even if it makes no sense, has no depth of knowledge, and is pretty much all irrelevant or wrong. And I think an F is like, what, 10% or something? Might even be more than that. Yeah, so if you, worst case, absolute disaster, you literally have no idea, you think, oh my god, I can't answer any of these. Write literally anything that is vaguely relevant, and you're not going to do well, but it's better than writing nothing. Like, don't leave it blank, whatever you do, because again, even if you get 2 marks, that's better than 0. So again, this is available. I don't know if it's on QM Plus, I guess it is, but it'll be on this slide. So hopefully that'll be a bit helpful. So at higher levels, they kind of want these other weird name things, synthesis and balance, originality and innovation. So I think my interpretation of this is that this is to do with the structure and the way you lay out your essay with regards to answering the question. And I think as you get to year 3, they probably want more analysis, critical analysis of studies. So things like original ideas. So I'm kind of thinking, does that mean, oh, based on this evidence, here's my own ideas? I don't know, because I mean, we're not, you know, researchers, we're 3rd-year undergrads. So not so sure about that. But again, that's definitely worth something, going to your individual module leads, for example, and asking, because that's what we'll be doing. Okay, great. So I found some resources just on QMUL, QM Plus. You probably know these already, but I thought I'd just put those there just in case. So there are some workshops run by the library, that sort of thing, drop-in sessions. There's some sort of blogs on exam season advice, and then there's the link for past papers, which hopefully will work, but I'm sure you can find all on QM Plus. Not all of them will have past papers, and some of them will only have specimen exam questions, which I don't know how close they are to the actual exam papers. They're usually not that bad, but I think sometimes the specimen papers are actually harder. So if one seems ridiculously hard, try not to freak out. Okay, so I think that was everything. Yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to say. So if you have any questions, you can either ask them now. Here's going to come and talk to you for a bit. I'll hang around for a bit at the end as well. So hopefully that was helpful and not too boring. But yeah, good luck in your exams, guys. All right, thank you. Okay, so should I just put...
You guys, any questions? I had a question.
Yeah.
That some people probably struggle with is like, how do you choose which essay to do? Because they give you like 3 options. How do you know?
Oh, that's a good point.
And then what if you're writing one and then midway you start stressing that, oh no, I could have done better on another. Do you think it's too late to sort of switch?
Yeah. I mean, okay, the obvious answer is there's probably going to be one that you kind of think, yeah, I'm most confident with that. Sometimes it can be more difficult, because if you think, oh, I feel like I'm about the same with 2 or even all 3 of the questions, don't know if this is working, yeah, with 2 or 3 of the questions, then it makes it a lot harder to decide. So this is where my kind of thing of doing a plan, coming back to it might help. So I think if I can't decide, I actually do a plan for like the 2 I'm deciding between. And once you come back a couple of times, it's usually then clear which one actually you do know more about. Also, if there's one that does give you the opportunity to put in extra reading you've done, then definitely pick that. So, like I said, keep going back to the immunology one, because that's the only one that it happened in. That one was literally, I would not have been able to answer that if I hadn't done some extra reading that a mentor last year had mentioned. So, if you can do one that's, yeah, if you can see one that you know the basics of, and you also have done relevant extra reading, I would say pick that as your top priority, but only if you know the basic stuff. Because if you have got loads of detail but you've missed out a couple of basic points, like I did on some of mine, that will bring you down. I mean, you're not going to fail, but that will probably stop you from getting an A. So, I mean, B is still good, but it's probably worth getting that basic stuff in first and building up. So, yeah, that would be my advice for that. Any other questions while Hira sets up? No? Cool.
Seriously,
Okay.
no question.
It's all right. I'll be around at the end if you guys want to ask me.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I'll pass you over that then.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Caitlin. All right. So, hopefully that was really helpful. What I did, actually, when I went to my tutor, I sneakily took a few photographs of my answers. Yeah, I'm probably not allowed to do this, but just don't tell anyone, okay? So yeah, I'll share these with you. This is for my immunology. Can you guys read it or not?
It's a bit bright.
Yeah. Okay, I'll read it for you guys.
I think there's some like light controls. There we go.
Better? Cool. Okay, yeah, let's go with this then. Okay, so this was a question on basically comparing the innate and the immune system, or actually no, it was basically when you get a cut, what happens? Just everything. Tell us everything you know on innate immunity and adaptive immunity. So what I wrote, I didn't take a picture of the whole essay, so I've got like a middle part. The cytotoxic T cells recognize the same antigen on infected cells as was used to activate them by the dendritic cells. Thus, they are specific, and they form the adaptive arm of the immune system. They attack infected host cells by 2 methods, release of granzymes or a fast-dependent manner. They form what is called an immunological synapse with their target cell, formed by the P-SMAC on the outside and the C-SMAC on the inside. The P-SMAC is formed by LFA1 and ICAM on T cells and target cell surface, respectively. The synapse causes the Golgi apparatus to reorient towards the target cell and release granzymes and perforins. The perforins form pores in the target cell's membrane through which the granzymes enter. Granzymes switch on a caspase cascade by cleaving caspase 3. This ends in CAD being activated, cleaving the cell's DNA. Granzymes also activate BID, which causes release of cytochrome C from the mitochondrial membranes. Thus, apoptosis is underway, and the host cell, which includes the pathogen, dies. FAS is also activated by T cell, and then, so I explained the granzymes and the perforins procedure first, and then I explained the FAS ligand and that other procedure. But what I want you to notice is where I get the ticks. So it's mostly examples, like LFA1 and ICAM1, that's a tick. Even though I could have just mentioned that it was the P-SMAC on the outside and C-SMAC on the inside, that's still good enough. But I still gave them an even, a better, like, more detail that it was made of LFA1 and ICAM. So that got me a tick there. And you see how it's structured. Like in the beginning, I told them that there were 2 methods, and then I go on and I describe the first method, and then I describe the second, and I move between it, but I don't really say, oh, now I'm going to describe the first method, and now I describe the second. And you can notice, like, it's very, like, my sentences are short, they're not elaborate, they're not well written in terms of English, but it still gives them everything they want from us, it sounds kind of boring, but it's, you know, it gives them all the info. And then I go on and I describe the fad, blah, blah, blah. I could send you these, possibly. You could read through them. But, you know, you kind of get an idea. I mean, I can't remember if I got an A for this one or a B. If it was a B, it was a high one, though, I think. And then I was thinking to myself, like, you could have given me an A. But, oh, yeah, okay. Neutrophils, do you guys, how many take BioMed here? Okay, how many take, okay. So you guys know this stuff, then. Okay. Most of you should by the end of the year. Okay, so neutrophils are the first cells that come into the site of infection. They enter the skin by a tethering, rolling, activation, and arrest process in response to the various molecules present on the endothelial surfaces. The first step, tethering, is a weak binding of a lectin on the endothelium, such as E-selectin. Got me a tick because I said such as, you know, even though that's good enough, I think, a lectin on the endothelium, but tick on the example, with its receptor on the neutrophil surface. And I couldn't remember the receptor, I think, so I didn't mention it, but they will not know, I guess. The neutrophil rolls on the surface of the vessel to search for a chemokine. In inflammatory processes, IL-8 is an important chemokine. Again, tick for the example. You know, you guys see what I'm doing, yeah? The chemokine binding to its receptor present on the surface of neutrophil causes the integrins on the neutrophil surface to gain an open conformation, which allows them to bind to the integrin receptors on the vessel. So they mention all of this stuff in the lectures, but where I found the extra reading, so I actually didn't have much extra reading for this immunology essay, but, you know, I still read the book. I think Janeway is good. I think Kubi is actually much better for immunology. But those of you that do Biomed second year, I'll do a session on that as well, tell you exactly what to do for each module. So the way the books helped me basically is to tie my ideas together, and they put it in a really nice, you know, they give you the flow. When I look at lectures and sort of bullet points, I sometimes miss out on like the bigger picture and tying everything together, and that's what books help me with, because, you know, they've got a content section and they go in order to explain stuff to you, and that's what I then recreate in my essays. Okay, so basically for pharmacology, this is a really stupid diagram that I drew in my exam. I mean, look at how, it doesn't even look like a diagram. It's basically just a weird, not even a flow chart. But yeah, he wrote, nice diagram, exclamation mark, next to that, because he liked it. Because, you know, it tells them a lot. It tells them that I understand the whole process. Okay, you know, there's a stressor, you know, signals, the amygdala is activated, CRF is produced, and then the CRF neurons are linked to all these different, you know, areas which control these processes. And this was actually more to remind me of what I was going to write next, but I still put it on there, and he thought it was nice. So, yeah, I mean, you know, just diagrams like this are cool. So, like Caitlin mentioned, doing the plan on the, in the beginning of the essay, I highly recommend that. Also, what I do is I basically do a brain dump rather than an essay. So I don't, you know, I don't think about the flow of my essay at that point, or the structure. I literally try and recall every single thing I know about that. So I will just dump everything on paper. And, you know, it's actually better for recall. If you're trying to remember something in order, your brain isn't really going to do that good of a job, because it's going to get stressed about the order. But just try doing, you know, random sparks everywhere and try recalling everything, you know. And yeah, basically imagine your lecturer as this or this. Tell me more. Just tell them more, okay? If you tell them something, just tell them more. This is a feedback. I think this is possibly one of the best essays I did. Not in my opinion, in the lecturer's opinion. And he wrote, this is an almost perfect essay, direct, to the point, with no irrelevant information, and you could perhaps do a summing up at the end. I didn't do a summing up because I ran out of time. But yeah, it's basically no irrelevant information, and they love it. You know, honestly, I was not happy with this exam at all. So even if you think you did really shit, hopefully you didn't, okay?
Is that biochem?
That is biochem, yes.
Oh yeah, and actually I'll just add to that, like
yeah.
the biochem one, I think I did one, and it was like comparing the structure of like
hemoglobin and keratin. No, hemoglobin and myoglobin, describing how structure relates to function. And I'm pretty sure I was terrified of biochem because it was just not going in. And I'm pretty sure I wrote that entire essay with A-level knowledge about hemoglobin and myoglobin. And I literally, I think I still got an A or a B in that, so I was over the moon. One tip I would also say that should remind me of is that I use this. This is usually your own risk because this is just what I do.
Yeah. Get the mic. Mic.
I would say so. As we've been saying about detail, like detail is really, really important and specific examples. So I personally sometimes, if I can't quite remember something, so that essay, for example, I remember in the lecture he'd mentioned about one specific. He was like amino acid at position whatever 147 creates a hydrogen bond with amino acid at position blah blah blah. I couldn't remember that, but I thought, well, that's really important. So to be honest, I just guessed. I don't know whether it was right or not, but if you do like one or maybe two of those guesses in an essay, to me, it's kind of like a little risk that's worth taking, because if there's a small possibility you get it right, then that's really great because it's a really specific example. If you get something like that wrong, if you just do it once and they'll probably go, oh, it was a really specific thing, never mind. So it is a gamble. So like I said, do that at your own risk. That's what I do. Because at least then I have a chance, basically.
Yeah. No, here I wrote MHC1 where it's meant to be MHC2, so they underlined it, but they didn't really make a huge fuss about it.
I doubt you're going to write like a totally 100% perfect essay with no mistakes or spelling errors, because it's stressful and you're not going to remember every single thing. So it's not like if you put one thing that's not right once, you're going to fail. If you write like transcription instead of translation the entire way through your essay, you probably, but it's really good, you'll probably get a C, but you're going to severely like cut back where you can get. So again, just to get the like keywords and examples are really important. And also another couple of things that I wrote were to basically do like a mini introduction at the beginning of each paragraph in your main body. So you don't need to sort of say like, neutrophils are white blood cells and blah, 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 blah. So like with Hira's example, she just said, oh, there's two mechanisms, and then talked about them. And also with choosing questions, so that immunology one of the questions was the compare and contrast that I did that was really short. That one was literally just what happens when you get cut. So that's pretty much the entire lecture series. So I avoided that one like the plague because I thought there's no way I'm going to have enough time to write everything. I mean, obviously you did fine on that.
But like on the other hand, I wouldn't do something that was too short. Like I personally would not choose an essay that I don't know much about or I feel like I can't write enough about.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wouldn't.
Yeah, it's a balance. I would say if there's two that you know, you think, yeah, I know all the info I can know about this. I'm really happy with both of them. But one of them's going to take me 6 pages to write, and one of them's going to take me 3. I personally would go for the shorter one because the less time you spend writing it, the more time you've got to go over it. And do all the little things, and you're more likely to then remember, oh, actually, yeah, I do remember an example, or just correct your spelling, correct your handwriting. So that's what I would do. Yeah, that's just a couple of things I thought as I was listening to yours. But if you've got anything else to add to that,
pretty much done.
Great. Okay, thanks guys. I hope that was useful.
A little funny, I guess, because I was a little funny in some of my essays, but not too funny. Okay, but like at the end, I ended my essay like, ooh, so thus the infection is effectively cleared by a combined effort of both arms of the immune system linked through the dendritic cells. And he's right, they are the most important cells of the immune system. And I was like, if Dan's reading it, he'd be like, no, he's not.
Minus 10 marks.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, obviously that's not, it's a bit of personality maybe, things like that. Probably no one else is going to do that. I certainly didn't, because I'm boring. So, yeah, don't obviously be weird. But, if it's something that maybe makes you stand out a bit and is still factually correct, then I think it's good to put it in. Okay, cool. So I think
all right. We'll still hear, I guess, if you guys want to come up and ask questions or just raise your hand.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Cool, thanks.
How do I mute this?
And turn it off.
Hi.
Yes. Session on individual modules.
Next week, Monday or Tuesday, I think.
Question.
I do.
Yeah.
So,